Turn that sound off, will you?
I don't know
Hey,
how
folks.
to.
Welcome to the pre-show.
I don't know how to.
Here, just turn down the sound. You got to sign into my phone. Folks, we're just getting set up. This is not the show for anybody arriving here that doesn't know that. So,
Turn my YouTube on.
oh, there, it's off. You're going to have to redo it when you get over there. So, how's everybody tonight? Just getting all set up. I got all my banners going. I got this going and that going. My soundboard is set. Bada boom. Rainey is now at camp with Rowan, and Flynn is still at camp until tomorrow morning. So it's just Ellie and me tonight. So she'll be here for just the first couple of minutes. Hey, Barbie D. Hey, Leslie. How you doing? Matthew Sainsbury. And Master Finn. How you doing, brother? Good to see you. I'm wondering, I have Ruben here tonight, and I have not heard back from him today. He was going to do a little thing on the Native American girls that were found, or kids that were found at the schools dead over the last year or so up in Canada and different places. And hold on, don't just interrupt. If you're going to sit there. Who's Andy? Where are you going to Andy's house?
With you.
Oh, well, that is something we talked about, but we still haven't made any plans on that yet. So it's coming up, though. I got to start the stream. Stream is on. I'm going to turn my sound down so we don't get feedback. Boom, everything's ready to go. How's everybody tonight? Hope you're doing well. I was hoping Ruben would be joining me as well. I wrote him this morning to remind him about having had talked about him coming on tonight. And I haven't heard from him all day. So who knows? You know, Ruben, I may get him calling right in the middle of the show. So we'll see. Hey, Peter Matthews. Good to see you. Hope you're good. Thanks for being here, brother. 9:02, 57, 58, 59. 3 minutes after. We got 1 minute and 25 seconds before we go live on the radio station. I haven't seen Brianna yet. She'll be here soon, though. If she gets in here tonight. It's Friday night. It's busy for them. They got stuff. It's the end of their week. So if she makes it in here, we'll see her.
Because you still need to ask her if Haley can come over.
I do need to ask her that. Oh, excuse me, folks. Wow, it's not you. It's me. Really, it's me. So, just going to make sure I get all my junk ready for tonight. Let's see. That's something I'm going to talk about right there at the beginning. So,
let me see your top.
Ellery, let me see your top. She wants to see your shirt, I think. Let's see. Gotta what them all? Catch them all. Oh, it's a Pokemon thing. Pokemon. Here we go, folks. Going dark. Stand.
Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with two T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad, so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Intelligent talk indeed. Folks, welcome to the program. I'm your host, Scotty Roberts, same as every night, because this is my show, the Intrepid radio program, right here on Odyssey Radio. And you can go hear the audio version of this show over at Odyssey Radio. It's a radio station. They just transmit the audio version of this show, and that's over at Odyssey Radio, ODYSY radio.com. Go on over, see all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio, and check out everything that's going on over there. Wow, my sound is backing on me tonight. There we go. Now I got it. Had to get my setting right. And so welcome to the program. Those of you who are over in the chat room, you are watching via one of 4 different video simulcast means. 3 of them over on Facebook, over on my Facebook page. You can see it. Also on the Odyssey Radio Facebook page and on the Intrepid Radio Facebook page. And, of course, on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And if you're over on my YouTube page, go ahead and subscribe if you're not subscribed. And click the like button, the thumbs up. Hey, you can do the thumbs down, but I prefer you do the thumbs up. And that helps me over with my numbers and stuff over on YouTube. And you can hit the join button if you want to do more to help support the show. Just click that button. There's 3 ways you can support the show. And, of course, the show itself, as always, is no charge for anybody at any time. So thanks for being here. Thanks for you giving me your time. And here we are. Tonight, I've been really going into looking at a lot of the different legends and there's a lot of topics I've been trying to come up with. Because this show, we either do something historical or archaeological, or we get into talking about weird stuff, paranormal stuff, ghosty stuff. We also get into doing psychology, family psychology, personal psychology, all the things of the mind and the brain. And we get into doing, like we were doing with the meditations of Marcus Aurelius, getting into looking at philosophies of life. And I thought, we got to do more stuff. We got more things that we do here. As you see that scroll bar down below the window, if you're watching the video, those are all the different kinds of topics that we cover. And by the way, I saw a couple of people pop in. I wanted to say hey to Gordon Phillips from South Africa. Good to see you, brother. I don't think I've ever seen you in the show before, in the chat room. So welcome to the chat room. Gordon Phillips. Good to see you, brother. And Steve Clark is here. Matthew Sainsbury. Sarah Yusuf is here. Ryan Gale is here. And Daniel Craig is here. Peter Matthews. Good to see you. And Romellian and Barbie D and Leslie Holker. And all the other cast. And Matt Finn. Master Finn, my master and commander of the ship over there in the chat room on YouTube. All of you and anybody, if I'm missing you, Elderberry, good to see you as well. Welcome to the program. I'm glad you're here. All right. I have, it is just my young 7-year-old daughter, Ellery, and I, home alone tonight. Hi, she's waving from over at Rainey's desk. Her hand stuck up over the computer over there. So why don't you come on over if you want to say hi quick, Ellery. She was in the pre-show for a couple of minutes. But she says, I get to be on tonight, right? So say hi to everybody, Ellery.
Hi.
Okay.
I'm playing Roblox.
She's playing Roblox over on that computer. If you know what that is, you're a parent. So, okay, you can go. Bye. See ya. Scram. So Rainey is off to camp again with one of the other kids. Rowan just got back from doing a Bible camp with a friend of hers that invited her to Bible camp. She got back yesterday, and now she's off to scout camp with Rainey for the weekend. And Flynn is just coming back from Boy Scout camp tomorrow. So tonight, it's just Ellie and me. We're hanging tonight. So she's going to be over on Mom's computer messing around. So, I wish we had computers like that when I was 7 years old. When I was 7, it was the late 1960s. I turned, of course, I was born in 60, so I was 67. I was 6 years old up until November, then turned 7. And that's the first year I ever watched Star Trek. So just wanted to let you know that. So I had Rainey is messaging me. Let's see. So she calls Ellery, Okay, there we go. She just sent me a phone number for her mom, which is not on my phone, in case Ellery wants to talk to Grandma. So that's the personal side. As most of you, my regular watchers and listeners know, my show becomes a very familial show some nights where everybody likes to invade the space, and they'll go off behind me here, even though they're not supposed to while I'm on air, and they'll do their thing back there. So Ellery's over there tonight. Just so you know, if I have any interruptions during this show of the familial nature, it's because I'm all alone with the 7-year-old tonight. So it's me, she just yelled. So tonight, some of these things I started to talk about, these things that we're looking into on this show, they're, as I've always said about Intrepid Radio, I do the things that I like to do. The things I like to talk about, the stuff that moves me or motivates me or is passionate, that I'm passionate about. Those are the things I want to talk about. And that's why you get the kind of fare on this show that you get. And that's why I don't really care or give a rat's ass if somebody has a problem if my kids come on the show every now and then. It's what I do. It's what we do here. I'm sorry, but I make no apologies for any of it. And so the topic tonight is something else that was very intriguing to me. And again, this is why I kind of wish we'd had Ruben Fasthorse with us tonight. I tried to get a hold of him earlier today a couple of times, and I have not seen him today or heard from him. So I just thought his input would be good because we're going to be talking about some Native American legends. And it's kind of a mysterious anthropological question. Some people think it's fake. Some people think it's just mythology or pure legend. Others say that there's more to it than that. And we're going to talk about the Moon-Eyed people of Appalachia, who supposedly, as we get into it, you'll hear more about this. Supposedly, they're long before indigenous nations were here. And so it'll be an interesting topic, and we'll jump into those. Daniel Craig says one of these days we'll have to explore Judaculla. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Judaculla Rock here in North Carolina. I know Micah has done that. Micah Hanks out there And yeah, Daniel, I would love to do that when I get out there again to North Carolina. We should do that together. I think that'd be a lot of fun. And let's see, Romeldian, what are people saying? You're talking about bedtime. When I was 7, I was in bed by now. Me too. When I was 7. But somewhere in there. Now, my mom, as most of you know, when I was a little kid, was a single mom. Single mom in her 20s of 3 kids. So when I was 7 years old, my mom was 26. And I had an older brother by a year and a half and a younger sister 5 years younger, who was 2 at that time. And so she was a single mom, and she worked as a waitress during that time. And those were the times when we just stayed up all night. We did our own thing. We were kids like that. We were the kids that you see in the movies in the 60s and 70s. We were good kids. We didn't do bad stuff, but that's what we did. Now, our kids tend to stay up late with us, but then they're up early, too. So Leslie says it was a different time back then, and staying up till 8:30 was staying up late. Yeah, that's kind of true. I did a morning paper route on the weekends anyway, and we'd stay up all night sometimes to get up and do the Sunday morning paper routes, delivering papers. So anyway, there's something I wanted you to look at before we get into talking about the Moon-Eyed people. And this is the, I don't think this is new news, but many people don't know this. And since we were talking about the past couple of days about Ingo Swann and his remote viewing of Jupiter and his remote viewing of the moon, and talking about the base on the moon and aliens on the moon and things like that, the way it's been interpreted by some, I thought this was an interesting article. And if you're out there listening, Andrea Mulnick, she sent this to me. Scientists discover a giant reservoir of hidden water just 3 feet below the Mars Grand Canyon. Had you heard about this? I'd heard about them finding water on Mars. But if we send a crewed spaceship to Mars right now, and it lands in a large canyon and starts exploring, they're going to find massive deposits of water just a few feet below the surface. Then the ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, the TGO mission, discovered large volumes of water in the red planet's valleys. It's Valles. So it's pronounced Valles or Valles Marineris Canyon system. And the European Space Agency and the Russian Space Agency, Roscosmos, it's Roscosmos is what it is. Roscosmos, there you go. Jointly manage TGO. And the orbiter is equipped with a device that maps the hydrogen in the top layer of the Martian soil. And data reveals an unusually high concentration of hydrogen in Candor Chaos, a key section of Valles Marineris, and implying that up to 40% of the near-surface material in that location could contain water. And so with TGO, we can look down to 1 meter below this dusty layer and see what's going on below Mars' surface, and crucially, locate water-rich oases that couldn't be detected with previous instruments. That's Igor Mitrofanov of the Space Research Institute of the Russian Academy of Sciences. And he said this in an ESA statement on Wednesday. Mironov is the lead author of a paper published in the journal Icarus on water discoveries. And Valles Marineris is so huge that NASA refers to it as the Grand Canyon of Mars, except that it's a lot bigger than the U.S. landmark. The Mars version is 1,860 miles. That's 3,000 kilometers for those of you using the metric system out there. Long, and it reaches a depth of 5 miles, the canyon itself, or 8 kilometers. And the water in Valles Marineris may be mineralized, but the scientists believe it's more likely to be in the form of ice. And this raises the issue of how the water ice is retained in a region of Mars where it would normally evaporate. And so this suggests that some special, as yet unclear mix of conditions must be present in Valles Marineris to preserve the water, or that is somehow being replenished. So maybe there's some underground springs on Mars that feed that. So scientists have been examining both the past and the current presence of water on Mars, and they're looking for what may be hidden lakes or just frozen clay, and mapping out water ice that could be reached by the future human explorers. And they're locating and utilizing local water resources would be critical to any kind of Mars colonization plans. So knowing more about how and where water exists on present-day Mars is essential to understand what happened to Mars once abundant water by the telltale signs all over the surface. And it helps our search for habitable environments, possible signs of past life, and organic materials from Mars' earliest days. And according to NASA, the Valles Marineris Canyon is the biggest known canyon in the solar system. I'll bet you didn't know that. So, not that it does anything for us. I don't think we're going to be traveling to Mars anytime soon as a vacation spot. But it stretches from what would be here, New York City, to California. And if we're on Earth. And so if space tourism ever makes it to Mars, the canyon system would be a sight to behold with an abundance of water in the mix. We might be looking at Mars as humanity's future vacation spot. Could you imagine? We're going for a weekend to Mars. We're going to go camping on Mars with the family. So let's see. Steve Clark was 7 in 1962, he says over there in the chat room. And so there you go. I just wanted to introduce you a bit with that little tidbit on Mars. So what is the possibility, do you think, that there was life on Mars the way we might define it? Now, not life just as in bacterial life or, subatomic life or microscopic life. That's the word I was looking for. But was there life, do you think, the way we know it now? Have there been? Remember we were showing those pictures on the moon and how all these blacked out areas and these faded areas NASA won't release, and they're releasing some photos that have actual squares where they just blotted things out and they've fuzzed out things. They've taken and blurred areas so you can't see them that are in shapes. Why are they doing that? Is there telltale signs of life on the moon, and are there telltale signs of life on Mars? Be very interesting questions. It'll be interesting to see what we come up with. And I would like to know why NASA or our government thinks it's essential that we don't know about these things. So what, are we going to build rockets and go destroy the sites or something? No. So what is it they're trying to hide up there? Sarah Yasu says we've been in the Goldilocks zone for life to exist. That's where we are right now. Well, of course, I just saw Michio Kaku, who said something about just in our galaxy alone, there's something like 10 billion solar systems. And he says out of those, the exponential number of habitable planets in the Goldilocks zone, we don't know for sure because we have no way to explore that. But the mathematical probability that there's life out there, as we might imagine it, is probably very high. So that's interesting. Now, that gets us into talking about the moon-eyed people. And I thought that this was a really interesting topic. And I wanted to bring this up to you. That there are legends and there's tales in the world that are old, tattered, and nearly forgotten, once proudly passed down generations. These legends were slowly taken over by unforgivable passages of time. And some of the most enigmatic tales that we have can be traced to the North American continent, where there once There was carefully maintained by Native American tribes. And when the European peoples first set foot on the American continent, they came in, long before Columbus, by the way, they came into contact with various tribes, according to Native American, indigenous First Nations peoples. They came in contact with various tribes that were already here, and many of them completely different in customs, in appearance, and in language. And from this time of first contact, some really quite unique legends have survived, being documented in their original form by these earliest chroniclers. And a lot of this wasn't necessarily written down language. It was oral tradition, passed down, oral history. So undoubtedly the most mysterious of all Native American legends is the story of the Moon-Eyed People. These mysterious white men that warred and intermingled with the Native Americans long before the Europeans arrived. And so the big question is, can there be any truth to this myth? Is this just a myth and a legend? Is it something that there is truth to? So what do we know about them so far? What do we know about the Moon-Eyed People? Have you even heard about the Moon-Eyed People? Anybody in the chat room? Have you heard about the Moon-Eyed People before I mention them in this show in any way, shape, or form? And by the way, the big specter rises over this is that if we identify that there actually was a race of white-skinned or light-skinned peoples that were here before the native cultures, is there going to be a culture war over this now? Racist wars and stuff like that over ideology, over legends, over mythology, and so on. I don't think it matters. Of course, that's me, a white guy, saying it. And isn't it funny how nowadays we have to put that caveat on things? But I don't really care who was there first. I think the history and even the anthropology of the stories is something that's very intriguing, and it's worth looking into. So in making contact with Native American Cherokee tribe, European settlers took notice of a peculiar oral tradition that they had that had been present within the tribe for many, many generations. Even at that time, around the mid-1700s, this tradition was dim and maintained by only a few village elders and chiefs. They all spoke of the mysterious Moon-Eyed People, a unique race of people that dwelt in the region of southeastern America before the arrival of the Cherokee. And the legend says that these men ostensibly were white. They were unable to see in the daylight, and that they warred with the Cherokee. And the latter expelled these wretches, quote unquote, as they called them, and settled in their lands, where they remained for generations after. And so the first European documentations of the legend is dated back to 1797, almost the turn of the next century, when the noted American botanist and professor Benjamin Smith Burton writes in his book of these ancient Moon-Eyed People. And apparently from a first-hand account, he cited a Colonel Leonard Marbury, who served as an intermediary between the American government and the Cherokee tribe. Burton wrote this about these Moon-Eyed People. He said, "The Cherokee tell us that when they first arrived in the country, which they inhabit, they found it possessed by certain Moon-Eyed People who could not see in the daytime, and these wretches they expelled." So a later article stated that Burton considered the mysterious race as being albino, explaining the fact that they could not see during the daytime, very sensitive eyes, and very white skin. And so the odd albino encounter of Lionel Wafer, the Buccaneer, goes like this. Burton went on to connect with these accounts with those of the Welsh maritime explorer Lionel Wafer. Now, Wafer, in his 1699 book, about 100 years earlier, called A New Voyage and Description of the Isthmus of America, described communities of albinos that he encountered in the Isthmus of Darien amongst the Kuna Indians. down in Central America. And this is from his book. I've got this lengthy section here I pulled out. This is what Lionel Wafer had to say. There is one complexion so singular among a sort of people in this country I never saw nor heard of any like them in any part of the world. They are white, and there are of them of both sexes. They differ from the other Indians chiefly in respect of color, though not that only. Their skins are not of such a white as those of fair people among Europeans, but 'tis rather a milk white, lighter than the color of any Europeans, and much like that of a white horse. For there is this further remarkable in them, that their bodies are beset all over, more or less, with a fine, short, milk-white down, or really fine hair, which adds to the whiteness of their skins. The men would probably have white bristles for beards, did they not prevent them by their customs of plucking the young beard up by the roots continually. Their eyebrows are milk white also, and so is the hair of their heads, and very fine withal, about the length of 6 or 8 inches, and inclining to a curl. And what is yet more strange, their eyelids bend and open in an oblong figure, pointing toward the coronas, and forming an arc or a figure of a crescent with the points downward. Sweetie, I'm going to have you go over there. Okay, make sure you wipe it all off. Thank you very much. I accidentally spilled Pepsi on your phone, Dad. Shouldn't be drinking Pepsi this late. Okay. There's just one sitting on the desk over there. Pardon that familial moment, folks. So he said, from hence, and from seeing so clear as they do in the moonshiny night, we used to call them moon-eyed. For they see not very well in the sun, pouring in the clearest day, their eyes being but weak and running with water if the sun shines toward them, so that in the daytime they care not to go abroad, unless to be a cloudy dark day. But notwithstanding, their being thus sluggish and dull and restive in the daytime, yet when moonshiny nights come, they are all life and activity, running abroad and into the woods, skipping about like wild bucks, and running as fast as moonlight, even in the gloom and the shade of the woods, as the other Indians by day, being as nimble as they, though not so strong and lusty. The copper-colored Indians seem not to respect these so much as those of their own complexion, looking on them as somewhat monstrous. Now, that was from his book describing these people. So over time, there were other documentarians of these myths, and all generally attributed to the Cherokee Indians. Ezekiel Sanford, writing in his History of the United States Before the Revolution, that was his book, and B.R. Carroll in the Historical Collections of South Carolina, mention the moon-eyed people as a Cherokee tradition. They attribute the story they documented to the early American historian James Adair. And in 1902, writer James Mooney attempted to connect the earlier story of Benjamin Barton with all other similar accounts he collected. And his book was entitled The Myths of the Cherokee. It revisits the work of another early American historian, John Haywood. So you can see there were a lot of early American historians who were writing about these people. The later wrote in 1823 in his book, Natural and Aboriginal History of Tennessee. And he writes of white people, quote unquote, who were extirpated in part, and in part were driven from Kentucky and probably also from West Tennessee. So they took these Cherokee mythologies or legends or stories or oral histories as being fact, that these people existed. And they're just passing this information on as they heard it from the Native American tribes. Hey guys, coming into the chat room, Paul Roney, good to see you. Glad you're here. He needs a living room in his car. And June Shasta, good to see you as well. Anybody else piling into the chat room, welcome again. So Haywood gathered accounts of the Cherokee and passed through generations. These accounts were, which describe how they encountered white people on the Little Tennessee River. They were discovered where they discovered fortifications that contained hoes, axes, guns, and other metallic utensils. And when arriving for the first time in this region, the Cherokee met no other Aboriginal groups. And according to the tales, they found a series of fortifications that stretched down the Tennessee River all the way to the Chickamauga River. And they also gave the precise locations of 3 such forts. So apparently, the invading Cherokee fought a war with these white people that were there, these pre-indigenous, what we call now indigenous peoples, white people who were there in that region. And they drove them away to the mouth of the big Chickamauga. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Although you Southerners down there, you know what I'm talking about. The Chickamauga is what it looks like. Chickamauga. And there's a certain treaty was made. And it's allowing the white people to flee the area in peace by treaty with the Native American tribes and the Cherokee. And so James Mooney also got what a great name to have when you're talking about the Moon-eyed people. James Mooney also gathered 2 similar independent sources from older Cherokee that recalled the traditions of people who were very small, they were perfectly white, that lived north of the Hiwassee River when the Cherokee first arrived in the area, and they subsequently fled westward. However, one of the sources for the tales comes from an early governor of Tennessee, a guy named John Sevier. So during his time, many areas of the Appalachians, if you can hold your thought, sweetheart, while I'm on radio, that would be phenomenal. I'm sorry. Why don't you go lay down over there and let's talk about that when I'm off radio, okay? All right, told you, folks, we're going to have some interruptions now and then tonight because I'm the only one here with the child. So, and of course, she does her own thing most of the day, but then I get on radio and there's like 5 things that have to happen. It's the way it is. You know it is. If you have kids, you know, your kids don't interrupt you until you're on the phone with an important conversation or something like that. So there you go. And it's never quite stuck with my littlest kids. Then when I'm on the radio, you can come over if you want and interrupt when I let you, but it's not just something you just come in and out and start talking to me. So you all know how that goes. Any regular listener to this show, you know how it's gone over the last few years here. So anyway, talking about John Sevier, during his time, many areas of the Appalachians were part of the Cherokee Nation. And according to some sources, John Sevier visited a unique site in Georgia in 1782. So this is just post-American Revolution, which really ended, the war ended in 1782. And the Fort Mountain, he called it. And there he met a venerable Cherokee chief, Oconostota, Oconostota. I want to get the pronunciation right. I read it, and I've read it 100 times, but I don't speak it that often. Oconostota, who was 90 years old in 1782, and he heard from him a unique story that the chief learned from his forefathers. And the story told of the fort being built by white men from across the Great Water. Now, this chief said that these men crossed the Great Water and landed first near the mouth of Alabama River, the Alabama River near Mobile, Alabama. Could these white men be the Moon-eyed people? Is the question that is asked. And the other Native American myth became inseparably connected with the story of the Moon-eyed people. And this is also true of the myth of the Welsh prince, Madoc ab Owain Gwynedd, I think is the way that's pronounced. I'm not up on all my Welsh pronunciations with the double N's and the double Y's and the double D's and the GW's and all that. So he was an early medieval maritime explorer, this prince, and according to numerous myths and tales, the young Welsh Prince Madoc, fleeing internectine, I don't even know what that word is that I've got written down here. Internecine violence back at home. He set sail toward the west and eventually arrived in North America. And the purported year for his arrival in the new land was about 1170 AD. And he made his supposed discovery around 300 years earlier than Christopher Columbus. So the story survived as a hazy oral tradition within Wales itself, but also as a myth amongst the Native American Indians. And by the way, these forts we're talking about, you get already in your mind, you can get pictures of these timbered forts and so on. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about some of these places are still there today, these rock formations, these foundations for ancient forts that are there, and you can find them. Daniel Craig talks about some of the, in the chat room over there, was talking about some of the pictographs that are all over the area down there. And you can find these kind of ruins everywhere, from New York State into Appalachia. And so, well, the story survives as this hazy oral tradition. And many accounts tell that the Welsh, who set foot into America, constructed numerous stone forts, akin to those that they had at home back in Wales, and that they warred and intermarried with the natives. And some early European accounts describe native tribes that were unlike all other red-skinned people, that they were similar to Europeans, having full beards, red hair, blue eyes. Similar accounts also tell that such Welsh Indian tribes spoke a language oddly similar to Welsh, and that some explorers could even communicate with them in this language. American adventurer and lawyer and painter and author and traveler George Catlin thought the Mandan tribe built, they had these bull boats, which are kind of these round boats instead of the canoe-shaped boat, that was very similar to the Welsh coracle, leading to the connection between the Moon-Eyed people and the Welsh. And remember the Mandans? They were the tribe that Lewis and Clark encountered in their westward move past the Limhi Pass, and when they started getting up into the northern Rockies. So there's this idea now that the medieval Welshmen came to this country, before it was a country, the country, the land, and they intermingled with the natives. On November 26th of 1608, Peter Wynne, a member of Captain Christopher Newport's exploration party to the villages of the Monacan people, a native tribe who were Virginia Siouan speakers, wrote a letter. This is why I wanted Ruben here. I wanted him to talk about the linguistics of some of this. Wrote a letter to one John Egerton. And in the letter, Newport informs Egerton that some members of his party believed the pronunciation of the Monacans' language resembled Welsh, which Wynne spoke. And he asked Wynne to act as an interpreter. So tribes like the Mandan were considered by these early explorers to be the offspring of Welshmen, intermarrying the native tribes, since the Mandan differed greatly in looks and customs from other Indians. And one curious location that could connect the theories of a Welsh medieval explorers in the plural, and Moon-Eyed people, is the so-called Fort Mountain, located in Georgia. Now, this mountain carries the remains of a formidable stone fortress on its very top. Hence the name, Fort Mountain. And the stone wall measures 720 meters or 885 feet. And it's quite reminiscent of a European castle and a fort building tradition. So could this be the remnant of Welsh medieval moon-eyed explorers? Local legends claim that it's so, and plaques at the site confidently proclaim that this is, a Welsh fort. And to that end, a unique discovery has been linked to both this and other similar fort remains in the region. And this discovery was mentioned again by John Sevier of Tennessee, He wrote in a letter to his friend, Major Amos Stoddard, that the Cherokee chief Okantastora, aged 90 at the time, shared the tradition of the stone fort remains along the Alabama River, which stretch into Georgia, as well as they were built by white people called Welsh as protection against the ancestors of the Cherokee, who eventually drove them from the region. Now, John Sevier goes on to mention a curious discovery made in 1799 of 6 skeletons wearing brass armor with the Welsh coat of arms etched one upon the other. And due to this, Sevier confidently claimed that Prince Madoc and his Welshmen were the first white men to reach Alabama and Georgia. And the same account was confirmed in 1824 by a noted author and historian, Thomas Hindy, in a letter that he wrote of a 1799 discovery of 6 soldiers that had been dug up near Jeffersonville, Indiana, on the Ohio River. And if you're not familiar, if you're from out of the country, Indiana is about as Central America as you can get. So you've already come down, and Indiana is on the east, still on the east side, or is it the west side of the Mississippi? I think it's on the west. And it goes right down. You can get to Indiana by going a little south and a little east of here. So it's east of the Mississippi, I do believe. Somebody correct my geography. I don't know why I don't know that. So the same account was confirmed by Thomas Hindy, and talked about skeletons dug up near Jeffersonville. And these skeletons had breastplates that contained Welsh coat of arms as well. And so another question, there's another angle here. Were the Moon-Eyed people Stone Age North Americans? Maybe the Welsh intermingled in amongst this much later, but are they ancient Stone-Aged North Americans? And curiously, the legend of the Moon-Eyed people existed amongst the Cherokee of Ohio also. And here's some native elders and historians. They proposed that the Moon-Eyed people could be linked to the mound builders of the Adena culture, dating to as early as 500 BCE here in what is now the United States. So much remains of a mystery concerning these mound builders of ancient America. And the question is, could they have been prehistoric, stone-aged white people that crossed ice bridges and settled in the land? So excavating the mounds of this culture, curious finds were made. For example, the Creel Mound of West Virginia yielded the remains of a very large skeleton of a once most powerful man, quote unquote, that measured 6 feet, 8 3/4 inches from head to toe. And could the Moon-Eyed people be connected to the legends of prehistoric red-haired and red-bearded giants that left unmistakable traces across southeastern North America? Now, the mystery of the Moon-Eyed people is substantiated in so many ways, and we still don't really know or fully understand who they were or where they came from. There was also a statue that was found, and if you saw the graphic for tonight's show, I don't have a picture up here that I can show you in the video chat, but there was, on that graphic, you'll see a little miniature of the 2 of the Moon-Eyed people standing next to each other, big round eyes they were said to have. So it's a very unique people, and they were unique amongst the Native American tribes. So when you start looking at the Moon-Eyed people, they're this legendary group. They're bearded, they're white-skinned. They're said to have lived in Appalachia until the Cherokee expelled them. And there's stories about them in Cherokee tradition. European settlers in America wrote about them, as we saw in many different accounts. And they had poor eyesight. They lived in caves or stayed in their dwellings during the day. Published accounts of an ancient Moon-Eyed people who lived in the southern Appalachian region of the United States before the Cherokee came have appeared in America since the late 18th century. And so sources disagree as to the accuracy of all these stories. And there's a lot of oral tradition behind these people. Whether they were indigenous peoples or early European explorers, and whether or not they built certain prehistoric structures found in the region, those are all up in the air. You'd think that we'd have a handle on that, and that we'd know this, and that we'd been able to apply archaeology and anthropology and figure out who these people are. Yet there's still the big question. Did they exist here before the influx of what we now refer to as Native American people? Or did they come later? And so different ideas have appeared in letters, newspapers, books for over 200 years now. And stories about the era before widespread European settlement were published by these early European settlers of America who got really interested in the native people and the old ruins in America. You can go today. I remember the first time I ever heard, several years ago, that there are ruins in North America that predate Native American culture. Because you think of, I grew up as a kid in the 60s and grade school, middle school, and high school in the 70s. And of course, what were we taught? Christopher Columbus discovered America, and there were tribes of people here, and so on. And it was as simple as that. It's not until they started doing more research and you start finding there's the Stonehenge in New York, the New York Stonehenge, the old rocks that are there, the old forts that are built there, the old ruins and walls that are all over North America. So you've got to ask, and you're left asking, how old are these? When did these people come here? Are they the Welsh? I did call up a list of Welsh, and we've only got a few minutes left before we go off air, but I'm going to pull this up, and we haven't even tapped through the surface of this topic, folks. I've been going kind of light on this, but I've got this list of words that, and I've got them phonetically spelled because I can't speak Welsh. And you think Welsh is English. It's not. It's modern Welsh is English, but it combines the Old Welsh Gaelic. They had words like this. In Mandan, the words to love, it was pakaru, pakare. And in Welsh, it's karu, pakare to karu. Love in Mandan. Now, remember, they said the Mandan tribe, they think, is a combination of languages. There's such a Welsh influence on the tongue that they think that's where it came from. Love, the word in Mandan is pakade. And in Welsh, it's karyad. Peace is herokahirish, and it's hethuk. Now, I don't know how those two sound alike, but they have some of the basic same structure. The word near, askash, or agas in Welsh. House was tiu, and in Welsh it's ot. Head is pan. In Welsh, it's pen. And so there's a whole list of words like these. So the big question is there Welsh influence? There's some linguists who say, no, that, and mind you, if you know anything like this and you read and research anything, you run into this over and over again. You got a whole list of scholars that go, nah, that isn't Welsh. Then you got a whole list of scholars that go, yeah, that's Welsh. So we don't know for sure. So the big question is, these moon-eyed children, who were they? Were they a race that no longer exists? Were they albino? Were they an albino people? I know, I was reading a book. You remember that book I told you about, that pirate book? Born to be Hanged was the pirate book. And it's about something that took place with the Kuna tribe, which I mentioned tonight, down in Central America, in Panama. And they had run into some members of the Kuna tribe, these pirates, and the notable pirates who kept records of what they did, these seamen. I think Henry Morgan was one of them, that talk of this white-skinned, fair-haired people in amongst the Kuna in Central America. So it's something worth studying. We may hit this topic if I dig out a little bit more again tomorrow night. If you're listening on the radio, we've got to part ways with you in just a few minutes. If you want to stick around, we're going to enter into the captain's cabin in just a few minutes here, where we can take your calls and we'll be talking. It's the after show. It's the afterglow, if you will, of the Intrepid radio program. So what I'm going to do right now is just tell you all, hey, the radio audience, live long and prosper.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid Radio Program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hi, my dad, so he can take me to Disneyland.
Doesn't that make you want to just swash your buckle? Welcome to the Captain's Cabin, folks. Aptly dubbed by you, the listeners, some time ago, since we're hanging around here in the chat room in the after show. And you're cold.
Yes.
Why don't you go put some pants on?
No.
Instead of your shorts.
No.
So this is where, if you're new to the show, if you haven't been here before, the Captain's Cabin is where we do the after show. And we generally have a couple of people call in. So, hey, Chuck Hendrickson. Yeah, I like the new intro. Thank you, sir. That's we threw that intro together for this show, for the after show. And so we had a little something that introduces it better.
Brianna come in?
I have not seen Brianna. Those of you in the chat room, I wasn't paying real close attention to the chat room during the radio portion of the show. Anybody seen Brianna Learman tonight? Ellery would like to know if she's out there. So, well, hello, Ellie, says Matthew Sainsbury. He's down in Barbados. He is he's like a pirate of the Caribbean. Arr. So this is where Ellery visits. Here, you don't have to mess with my stuff over here Don't mess with the mouse and the buttons. You're just here to sit. And sit on my lap, and you can
The
talk
dog looks
with
like
us.
she heard a knock.
Hola, says Kelly Bell Moron. So hey, Uncle Dave says, hey, Ellery.
Hi.
Hi. That's what her mom said to me the first time. Those of you who didn't hear, the first time I met Rainey, she was 2003 or 4. She was walking through the Irish pub with her girlfriend, and they were. Rainey was dressed to kill and just absolutely gorgeous. And I've forgotten her name, and I thought it was Renee, and not Rainey. And I said, "Hey, Renee!" And she walked by, and she did just what Ellery just did. Hi. And it was a while before we hit it off. So it wasn't that night, by the way. Uncle Dave is here. We're going to add Uncle Dave. There he is.
Hey.
Add him to the screen. I'm going to take down the Intrepid Radio. There you go. Housing. And there we are. There's Uncle Dave.
Not driving in the car tonight. I have better connections. I don't understand last night.
Good.
It was very frustrating.
Oh, yeah. Last night was rugged, but that's okay. Happens.
Hello, Ellery.
Turn the chat room back on.
There's the chat room. Ellery's Pokemon shirt has the moon-eyed people on it, she said. Kind of. Their eyes are closed, though. There you go. The
So,
moon-eyed people.
my theory on the moon-eyed people.
What's your theory?
Okay, so you go back a few generations
Sarah, by the
before
way.
that. You have the ancient Hopi out there, and they were supposedly saved by the ant people who took them underground for a generation or two
Right.
to avoid some great cataclysm. Right?
Yes.
So could the moon-eyed people
okay. You can't sit like
not be survivors of that who come back to the above ground?
It's possible.
They wouldn't you, after a couple of generations living underground, be more albino,
Squinty.
have squinty, unable to see in the bright sun, but
Right.
be capable of functioning in moonlight and such?
Possible, I suppose. But that's all if the ant people actually took them there. Who are the ant people?
Are you saying the Hopis are lying?
No. Don't tell the Hopi elders that I said that. Here's Sarah Yusuf. I was hoping she would come in.
No.
But I
Hey,
don't
Sarah.
think they're connected to the East Coast white people who started coming over in the, well, you have the Vikings who came over in,
The Vikings.
they were
So
much
did you
farther
have
north.
the Welsh, though, coming over in the 12th century.
You have Templar groups coming over at that same time as well, and building Newport Tower and several of those structures.
And I
So
think the first I had ever heard of the Welsh coming to America, or that there was a theory that it was early, it was a long time ago in a novel I read. I was reading, has any of you heard of Charles de Lint? He's a novelist. He's won awards for his writing for being what they call modern, not folklorist. Think of the stories of the Fae and the fairy folk and the fantasy. He's like an urban fantasy novelist, and he's written a lot of good books. One of them was called, I think it's called Moon. If it's not Moon Shadow, it was something like that, by Charles de Lint. And he talks about these Welsh-looking people in an old portrait that's in a little old shop that the main character finds, of these what looks like Welsh, somebody who's Welsh is sitting down with a Native American. And that's the first that ever hit me, and I wondered, could that possibly be true? Sarah, have you heard anything about any of this?
how are you tonight, Sarah?
Hey guys. So I actually live in the Appalachian region, so this is all familiar.
What, without giving away your specific coordinates, what part of Appalachia do you live in?
I mean, there's the Appalachian Mountains. I'm usually, near the Kentucky, Tennessee, Kentucky border.
Okay.
Where I'm at.
Yep.
I'm at where it touches 5 states and everything.
Sure.
So,
Are you safe from the flooding?
I'm sorry.
Are you safe from the flooding?
Oh yeah, Thank-
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
I'm big on the mountain and stuff. So.
My literary agent lives down there in Tennessee. So,
Oh yeah.
right
So
down in that area. Do you know her?
yeah.
Don't you hate that? You can go anywhere in the country. Oh, you're from Georgia? Do you know my friend Bob? Haven't run into Bob. Anyway, go ahead, Sarah. Sorry.
Right. So the stories for the Moonite people, and they're very there's other, sort of what do you call it? Not zoological, but I mean cryptozoological
Cryptozoological.
creatures who have similar types of descriptions in the area that similar to what you would call them the Moonite people. Like there's also for the people who are familiar with the Hellier documentaries, there's also the Kentucky Goblins out of the creatures that are alluded to come out of the entire network,
Let me interject. Did you see there was a series that I think dealt with them without calling the series anything like that? The elemental types, and it was done by the Newkirks.
That's Hellier. That's Hellier.
Hellier. That's what it's Hellier. So you're
they
familiar with that.
discuss different type. They call them Kentucky Goblins. Some of the original some original accounts, but the descriptions are very similar. That with in types of being short, pale, large eyes or a large head, very something that looks similar to an alien, bipedal, all that stuff. That there seems to be an illusion that these creatures are coming out of the giant mammoth cave system.
Right.
That's they're interwoven right underneath. It goes
and
for.
Of course, you don't see them much during the daytime. So the whole the nomenclature of that, so to speak, is or the attributes are similar. They're light skinned. They live underground, or they live in caves, and they don't come out during the day. They have sensitive eyes, and so on.
Right.
And so on.
Right. They're just different types of eye sensitivity. Lack of light usually indicates a lack of color. Because you don't. Some have been described as having blue eyes or not able to withstand any form of light. So you don't hear of brown, tan goblins or anything like that, or creatures.
They're always pale and pasty.
Yeah, and they never have any form of melatonin or
gray.
That sort. With
Dave, I see you moving your phone around so much. You forgot this little tripod I got for you.
Totally forgot that.
You got to set that up. That's a tabletop thing, so you can just get your phone right into that thing, and you're set. So, yeah, Sarah, that's that seems that these legends, these mythologies, these descriptions all seem to cross over. These different types of beings. It's what Ruben and I were talking about many times, about the mythologies that cross over between Celtic mythology, Native American mythology, the elementals, the fae, easy over there. So,
So,
what? It got quiet all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Sarah will have a cool spin on this, said June Shasta. There you go.
What is she asking? I don't have that chat.
She said she didn't ask it, just said you'll have a cool spin on this.
Oh, yeah, put me on the spot again.
Yes. So, that's why you're here.
Right. Right.
We put you on the spot.
Right. But I mean, as far as paranormal activity goes, I don't really get into like the whole cryptozoological stuff. I mean,
right.
Bigfoot, and we have our own version of Bigfoot, and I tend to spend more on the woo woo, spiritual type stuff. But we live in a very not just a haunted world, but a very I guess what you call dense, cryptozoologically dense
I agree.
world.
I agree.
I
I
think
think
Still
there's a lot
don't know
of
what's going on in
undiscovered
our
stuff.
backyard.
so much more going on in our world than we're aware of,
Right.
or that people want to be aware of.
Right.
I think some of that's cultural. Some of that all depends. Hey, Matthew Sainsbury's here. Maybe he's got some stuff like this down in Barbados. His own version of these things. Hey, Matthew, welcome to the program.
Hi. Good night, Scotty Roberts. Good night, Sarah. Good night, Dave. Yeah, thanks.
Amen.
Thanks for discussing this topic, though, on the moon people, though, or so, because I think when you were speaking about it, it rang a bell in my mind. I may have heard something about it in the past in a documentary or something, but I'm glad you raised it. I'm sorry that Ruben couldn't be on to really discuss it. There's a guy, I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's a ufologist, but he passed. His name was Robert Ordine. He's a top ufologist guy, and he talked a lot about how when you were discussing about NASA and you were talking about the moon and so like that, he talks about how he had to find pictures from China and those places of things that they saw on the moon that NASA covered up. And he said he had to go all the way over to China and Japan, these places, to get these photos that we could simply see here by our own American government, And he's get very frustrated of how the West and the American government is trying to censor the ufology topic so much to make it look like if it's just people's imagination, to make people look like they're dumb or something like that, So yeah.
Well, and that always surprises me at how our government doesn't try to suppress when we find things like the coelacanth. There's still exists.
Yeah.
It's not extinct. Or we found a new species of this or a new species of that. Yet the government seems to want to get involved in not or actively covering up things of like ufological nature, cryptozoological nature. What's the whole thing now with all the new Dave? Have you heard of this, and Sarah maybe too, with the whole Sasquatch and Bigfoot research? What's tied to that now is a lot of governmental stuff. When
there's a lot of areas which are known to be Sasquatch heavy areas that the government has quietly been buying up all that land and posting it private property by the government. You can't trespass there. You can't go there. What's that all about?
Yeah, secretive, very secretive stuff. Because there was a
But why? Why should it be secretive?
Yeah, because there was an object I heard about that crash in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, and people had tried to understand what the object was. And a minute found it looked like an acorn shape and had hieroglyphic writings on it. And the U.S. government came and told the people that they got to clear this site and to quarantine the place and everything. And people wanted to find out what this object was. And one of the guys who was able to get a chance to read the inscription said that he looked at all the other languages that have Hebrew writing, Egyptian writing, and none of it matched. This writing is not from here, you see. So what was the big mystery? I heard the guy say so on the program. I think it was on Solved Mysteries. Yeah, he talked about that. Yeah, Kecksburg, Pennsylvania.
Yep, I think that's the Glocken. I think that's recovered research from what the Nazis were working on.
Oh, do you? Why? Why would you think that? What leads you to that?
Because they have drawings of what the Glocken, the bell, looked like, and then when you compare those to drawings of what the Kecksburg thing looked like, it's an acorn-shaped, bell-shaped thing with runic hieroglyphics written around its rim. Almost identical. And the actual Glocken disappeared at the end of the war, as did the Nazi in charge of that program. And many people theorized that that was a form of a device that was either used to power the disc-shaped craft that they were working on, and the Glocken would actually fit up inside the craft and be its engine in essence. Other people theorized that it traveled through time and space. Well, if you were escaping Germany or Poland, actually, which is where the base was at that time, and you just jumped forward in time, but you didn't adjust for all the
Hmm.
spatial relationships and stuff. So you didn't end up back in Poland. You ended up along roughly that same parallel, but in Pennsylvania
Mhm.
in a
Oh,
future time.
Right.
quite interesting. Quite interesting.
So
There have been some theories that, with certain, especially with Bigfoot and Sasquatch, that I don't know if they're true or not, that they have some interdimensional aspect of them, which is why we never,
Yes.
see them
Yeah.
or have more evidence of them. But given the way, humanity is, encroaching into, different spaces and everything, because you would think that you would see have them more concentrated in areas where they're, humanity is constantly expanding into.
Right.
well, and man is constantly carrying cameras with them now because of our
Yep.
phones, and more footage is being brought out of people catching them, often not setting out to shoot one of them, but shooting something in the foreground, and one of those walks through the background.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They
Seeing
never
a
stop
lot of
for a
a lot
selfie.
more of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Never
because
seen
this
it.
guy called Albert Osman. Albert Osman, he lived back in the 20s or 30s. He went camping out in Canada. And as he was camping, he felt something lift him up. And then he was so afraid. And then when it actually dropped him, he said that he was around a whole family of Sasquatch family, a mother and a father and children. And so he managed to escape, but he was afraid to tell his story for a couple of years because he thought people would think that he's nuts. But it was only after the Bigfoot and Sasquatch sightings that he came forward and told his story about what he had to experience. See?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what I
Yeah.
don't understand is, these creatures are huge. They've been described
Yeah.
as being, at minimum, over, between 5 and 10 feet and all that. And for a creature of that size, you have to have a lot of it. You have to have a lot of food to go, take a lot of
Yeah.
energy. And then what are they eating?
Deer?
Because otherwise,
As you think
Deer,
about
they
it.
say deer and woodland creatures and things like that. Would they eat a human if they caught a human? There's the big question.
I mean, I haven't
if
heard
there's-
anything of.
I haven't
humans
either. I've
eating
heard
them,
I've
so-
heard them going after humans, but probably
People
not to eat them.
disappear in the
Probably
woods
just to
and
drive
hiking
them away
trails all
from
the
their
time.
territory. Is my thinking.
Mm.
So what, Dave?
People disappear out in the woodlands all the time.
Yeah. There's all that 411 stuff, which with a lot of disappearing people out there.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
you think
'cause,
they would go over the fat, juicy ones because it's always, the thin,
Yeah.
hikers
Steve,
and
who
everything.
was a runner
not
and
a lot
What
of
do you
nature
say?
going
pounds.
into the woods. See, there would be you would think they would be like hugging the road a bit more. Just grabbing.
You'd think.
They might go for the cute, adorable ones too.
Yeah, they just might.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
what was
'cause-
some of the story of the Fae when over in Ireland and on the British Isles? The Fae would steal children. They'd leave a changeling in its place or a glamoured stick in its place, so people thought it was the child when really it was a stick with a glamour put on it, and they thought the child had died, and they bury it, and then they go on with their lives. Meanwhile, the child lives with the Fae. Because not because they were serial killers or monsters in that way, but because they loved the children and they wanted the children. And in their way of, I don't know how they view the world, but according to the mythology, their view of the world and what their place was in it, it was their right to do that. They could take a child if they wanted it. So you start digging into the mythology of all that a little bit, and you start seeing beings that were capable of great harm, but also capable of great benevolence.
Yeah,
True,
and that's something that you as you look at different cultures all over the world, you see certain themes arising, like the kidnapping of children, and or certain types, thematic types, and like in what was it? My brain is not working.
It's all right. It's late where you are.
Yeah, pretty
It's late in Appalachia.
Right. But like Teonox, those are from it's not an island culture, but I mean, somebody will have to. I mean, there's like, babies who have been either replaced or
Right.
eaten or kidnapped, or it's something, anything that links to mostly the general fears of a culture, which is death of a child, or
Yeah.
replacement of my wife's been replaced by a djinn, or
Right. Right.
anything.
That's what's
Yeah.
going on around here.
Right.
Yeah.
As far as
Matthew, I'm going to let you go. Thanks for being here, brother. Thanks.
Thanks very much.
as far as being replaced by something else, and it's something that you see all over the place if you know where to look hard enough. And then and you see the sort of cultural evolution as you go, even I would assume across Native American cultures, what you see in Hopi culture or Cherokee culture, or Cree culture, that they have, depending on the regionality, that they have
Right.
some same creature by a different name, or what's that saying? A rose is a
rose by any other
and
name
smell
is
sweet. Yeah,
but doth smell is sweet.
right. Yes.
Hmm.
So,
Well,
yeah.
it's a possibility. Steve says if Bigfoot is from a different dimension, which is possibly at a different frequency, wouldn't they just disappear when they die? I don't think anybody knows, Steve. That's the thing. All
Well,
I
we
know
certainly
is
don't
nobody's
have the
found the
remains.
remains of a Bigfoot yet. So as far as we know, at least not one that hasn't been debunked, and who's doing the debunking could matter too. But
So there was a number of years ago where a pair of hunters were out hunting.
mhm.
This creature charged them. They shot it.
I remember this story.
Then its mate came. They shot her.
Yep.
They buried both of them. They went home. They weren't going to tell anyone because they looked, as they put it, too human. They were afraid that they would be convicted of murder.
I heard this guy on an old Art Bell.
Yep, exactly. And then they decided, they had talked to a couple of close friends, and they said, no, let's go get those bodies. And so they said, don't worry, we'll protect you. We'll say we found the bodies. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So they went back out there. They went to where they had buried them, and both bodies were gone. Well, if Steve's correct, maybe they just disappeared.
Maybe
after
they
the
did.
fact.
Would they have disappeared out of the bed of their pickup truck if they had hauled them back home? Who knows? I remember the account, and this guy, he was no actor. You could tell by his
clearly
his
shaken when
accent.
he was giving his story.
Yeah,
You could hear it, the trembling in his voice. He was clearly shaken.
yeah, just in just repeating the story.
Yeah.
And so the guy was very credible as to his story and his account of what happened. And he said, and that was a major point that I know even Art Bell, when he was talking to him, made. And that's one that you mentioned, Dave, is that this fellow said, he said, they looked too human. That's what scared them the most, is after they were shot. And I know even Art Bell said, so you shot a Bigfoot? Is that, he says, well, I'd shoot anything that's threatening me that I think might want to eat me. He says, yeah, I shot it. And I got the impression from his story, they weren't quite sure what they were shooting at first.
Yeah.
Was it a bear? Was it something they had no idea what it was? And then it was like,
it wasn't what they were hunting, but
Right.
it charged after them, and they were like, holy crap. But they were armed, and they defended
shot to
themselves.
defend themselves. Now, is that a question of, was the Bigfoot going to eat them or attack them? Was it driving them away? Would it have attacked? Would it have attacked them? I don't know. So it's an interesting question, and we don't know for sure. And of course, you got your skeptics out there that say it's all a lie and a fake story anyway. So what does it matter? Why dissect the story? I don't happen to think that. So.
Well, if they buried the creature, you would think that they would see evidence of it being
right.
Taken out of the ground and dragged somewhere, or
Yeah, and they went back to where they had buried. And I can't remember if they buried them underground or
They buried them
under
in the
brush.
ground. They buried them in the ground.
Yeah, but
if I'm
when they went
remembering
back, the
story
bodies were
correctly.
gone.
Yeah.
So there was just holes in the ground, or was it just there was no disturbance?
I think they tried to dig them up where they put them.
Assuming that they got the right spot.
Yes.
You know, once you hit a
Hold on
certain
one
point in the
second. You
woods,
guys
everything
talk
looks
for a
the
second.
same. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, they could have gotten the wrong area, but I think that something like that you would kind of remember.
You would hope. It sounds like the start of a horror movie, like that. What was it? I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So.
Probably would make a good movie.
My child is calling mom at camp at 10:30 at night. Phone's already ringing. She might not be picking up. She might not hear you, baby.
She might be.
She's got
frolicking
camp
with the
things
fairies.
going. She's a leader there, remember? So, and it's 10:30 at night at a kids' camp. I think everybody's probably sleeping. She just texted you? What'd she say?
Stop calling me.
Here, why don't you hang up? She hasn't picked up yet. She's not going to pick up. There you go. Scintillating live radio.
Yeah.
So
she's 7.
That's very true. It's 7-year-olds. You know, you got a totally different topic. It's another cryptozoological topic, I realize, small children. But what is it about telling small children the same thing over and over and over and over again? I mean, up into the teens. I'm talking about even the teens.
Year-olds.
Yeah, that's it. Even with teens.
You have to remember their brains are different. I mean, they're not as
warped.
developed.
Yeah. I just don't remember being that way. I wasn't a good kid, but I wasn't a bad kid either. But I generally did what I was told, and I generally got it. Now that's by my memory. You know, maybe my memory's faulty, but so I don't know.
Well, let me get Jane on the line, and we'll find out.
Yeah, we don't have to do that. Just take my word for it. So, anyway, Jane's my mom, by the way. We were at her birthday party a couple of weeks ago, and something came up. Oh, yeah, I remember. No, it was when she was here at the house playing with the kids all day, and said something about, oh, yeah, you did that so much. And I'm like, Mom, I did not. Do not deceive my children. I was a good kid. I was a parent's wet dream. And so, well, at least when I was a teenager, what'd I do? I spent the time from 7th grade on. I was in the youth group at the church I had joined. There's
an unsavory crowd.
Yeah, an unsavory
Talk
crowd.
about
That's
historical
for sure.
whitewashing.
I was at the church for like five nights a week doing stuff after school.
My dad was a preacher's kid. I know what kind of trouble they get into.
Yeah. Well, I was a good kid. So, until I figured out girls. Well, not figured them out, encountered.
Do we ever figure them out?
I don't think we ever figured them out.
There's
Sarah,
an
same thing, vice versa. So it's like, two completely different creatures, two different species.
Right,
so
right.
Learning to interact.
Excuse me. Well, I think we aren't going to go as late as we normally go. I've got a small child to take care of, and I don't want her to sit up until 11 o'clock waiting for me to finish the captain's cabin. So I think we're going to call it for tonight, guys. All of you who are here and listening, we generally go till about 11 o'clock Central Standard Time with the captain's cabin. Tonight I got to call it short.
Sometimes we don't.
As I said at the beginning, I'm the only person home with my young child tonight. Everybody else is gone doing stuff, camps and stuff like that. So I want to go take care of my kid, get her in bed, get her to sleep, and I'm going to leave you all to your devices. Sarah, thank you for popping in.
Wish I was more help. It's like I usually am more coherent.
The help is that you're part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's pretty
Always
cool.
a pleasure having you here.
It is. You have a good night, Sarah.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Good night. And Uncle Dave?
I don't think we're going to do Sunday.
What's Sunday?
The Chippewa Renfest thing.
Oh yeah. Oh,
I
that's
don't
right.
think
I
that's
don't
gonna
think I am
happen.
either because I just say what was Sunday.
Yeah,
I don't like missing that little Ren fair over here, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
just too many things on
So-
my plate this weekend.
Yeah, we got a lot going on. Rainey and Rowan will be back on Sunday. Flynn and Ellie will be here, but Rainey leaves for Alaska on Tuesday with Flynn.
Yeah, there's
So
just too much going on.
The
It's
next couple
crazy
of
to try
days
and
is
fit
gonna
that
be
in.
Crazy.
Yeah.
To squeeze in. And that's too bad that's where it's falling because it's a sweet little fair.
Yeah.
So, and it's so close to here. So,
Well, maybe I can whip out some costumes for the kids for next year, and you and Rainey have costumes, and we can all go and get.
yeah. Let's see if I can fit into my costumes. There's the big question.
Oh, I'm sure you will.
You remember the leather doublet I got from John Bear?
Yeah.
Who, guys, is now the king at the current fest, the big Minnesota festival. He was the royal prince, and he owned a motorcycle jacket company of his own, and he would make leather doublets, period pieces, and he gave me one of his old doublets, and it was black and red. It was black leather, but it had a red square on it, and in the squares he used actual silver thread, whatever you call that stuff, David. It's just silver thread. And he did the fleur-de-lis, 5 little fleur-de-lis and 3 royal lions, and then 3 royal lions and 5 he alternated them, and little fleur-de-lis all over the back, and it had silver clasps, and it was very cool. And I wore it with black velvet tights and the big black bucket boots. And
Yeah. We get the picture. You were hot and sexy, but you were younger.
I was skinnier and I was younger, and I took that doublet a couple of years ago. It's hanging in my closet. This is the only point I was making. I did this. I got it on. It's on the shoulders. I go, oh, this still fits pretty nice. And I take to clasp it. Oh, I guess not. That's all the further it went. I had about a gap like that right down the middle from my collarbone to my navel, where it didn't
Try it
get
again,
any closer.
Because all my old doublets like that at one time I couldn't close, I can overlap now. So, so I'm smaller than when I was wearing them.
That's nice. So, okay. Without further ado, I bid you adieu, Uncle Dave.
Adieu.
Have a good night.
Yep.
See you, brother. All right, folks. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of the show. I appreciate your being here. It means a lot to me. So all of you have a good night. And, as always, live long and prosper.